Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima. Welcome back to Blue Boards. This time we're not going to be checking out anything in particular because I hurt my wrist, if I'm being perfectly honest with you, and it actually makes it kind of hard to properly record board game videos because of the way I have to reach around the camera and what have you, so I had to do something a little bit simpler this time around. And simpler in this case is actually something I've wanted to do for a while because I got into modern day board games like a year ago. Like, not so much here, but like I was going to the board game store for about a month before I actually made this Board Game Geek account. So, it has been about a year since I started getting into board games, and I've actually been keeping track of all the board games I own, and all the ones that I've done videos on, because if we just go to my board game ratings here, you can see that not only have I been adding my own little opinions here, I've also been adding my videos here, although I don't think it's been helping out too much. I've also been doing score values for not only games that I've played and not done videos on yet, but the games that I have actually played and done videos on at this point. But I'm not actually that big of a fan of the way that Board Game Geek does their scores because they've got some very specific ways that they handle scoring. So if I just hover over here, you can see the list of recommended ratings, and this is what I've been working off. But I found that this actually causes my board game ratings to go a bit too high in the averages, and I wanted to actually reformat this a little bit, make it so that it is a little bit more evenly spread and gives me a bit more room to work with, because I don't think I'm ever going to rate a game a 1, because most games work well enough that 1 is just inconceivable on this rating scale. So I want to do something a little different with this scoring, and I want to turn it into something more like a replayability scale, where if I'm in a room with a bunch of games and a bunch of people and they're willing to listen to whatever picks that I've got on hand, how likely am I to pick the game in question? And of course, this doesn't exactly apply to solo games, but you get the idea. A room, a bunch of games, what am I most likely to pick off the shelf? So I want to reformat my scores around this concept in order to try and balance it out a bit. And we'll see how that goes, just for the fun of it. And it'll give me the opportunity to talk about a bunch of games that I haven't talked about on the channel yet. So, let's go and do this awful excuse for a 1-year anniversary video. So, might as well start with sorting out the ratings by highest, just for the fun of it, right? Save the bad games for later, right? So, how much is there going to be on the replayability scale? Well, Warfighter Shadow War is probably going to stay at 10, because that is still one of my favorite games of all time, and I wish I had more time to get that out and play it. I still haven't gone around to buying any of the expansions yet, and one of the videos I'm actually going to have coming up over the next few weeks, because it's one of the games I've been focusing on, is the modern version of Warfighter, just the one that isn't set at night. So, we're going to leave that at 10, because I think that deserves it. 51st State Master Set is actually going to go up to 10, because almost every time that I've taken the box into my weekly board game meetup, it's come out of the box and had a game played of it, and I actually agree with it, because I always have fun playing 51st State Master Set. It's just that damn good. And so, I believe it deserves that spot, and one of the few pre-orders that I have available to me is, well, that I have coming to me, I should say, is 51st State Ultimate Edition, with all of the tricks. So, I'm really looking forward to that coming in, although it's not coming in until next year. So, if you're waiting for videos on those expansions, I'm afraid they're going to have to wait until then. Shards of Infinity. I actually ended up playing a lot of games of this recently. Like, I played like 15 games of it over the course of a single day. Didn't lose a single one, but I will admit that this one's probably going to end up being a 10 as well, just because I enjoy the game that much. It does such a good job at balancing itself out. And it's very not much based on luck. Because I was playing against a few new people, don't get me wrong. But then I ended up playing a few games later on against someone who I would consider to be relatively skilled at the game. And I won every single game. And I don't mean this to be like tooting my own horn. But just in the idea that even with the randomness of the cards that come out of the central deck, luck does not play anywhere near as much of a factor as it does with other games of its kind. So, yeah, it's going to stay at 10, because I think it deserves it. Now, We're going to skip the expansions. We're going to skip expansions to games just to be fair and safe. So, yeah, we're going to leave Shards of Infinity Relics of the Future alone. Millennium Blades is going up to 10, even though it's an absolute massive pain in the neck to play. This is, again, basically just trying to ignore any sort of, like, penalties that would come from needing to do setup or what have you. But Millennium Blades is so good that I just can't leave it alone as a 10. Aeon's End? If I'm going to be playing a solo game, I mean, Warfighter Shadow War is probably going to be one of the ones that comes out the most. While this game is a 9 on the usual Board Game Geek scale, I'm probably going to drop it down to an 8. Because I think it is just going to lose out to a couple of other games that are going to be coming along here in this list. So we're going to drop that down to an 8 and see how it fares later on. I might have to go and refer back to my scores before we finish off this video entirely. BattleCon, very good game. With that said, replayability rating is a little bit lower for this one because it's only 2-player, and I'm going to need to spend a lot of time teaching someone about it, getting used to it and all that. So, you know, this one's probably only going to end up being played online, if I'm being honest. That and the box behind me is so bloody big that it has trouble fitting in any way I can get to the actual board game shop. So, replayability scale is a 7, but quality is a 9. I wish I could do, like, double scoring. If there was, like, a second custom thing here that I could turn into, like, you know, I could probably just edit my comments to be, like, that, to just talk about the replayability scale and score and the actual score, but we'll leave that alone for the time being, I think. Sentinels in the Multiverse Definitive Edition. 9 on the quality scale, but do I want to drop that to an 8? Yeah, I think we're going to drop that to an 8. Neuroshima Hex. Yeah, you know what? I want to leave that as a 9, because I really like the way that game works even when I'm getting my ass beat, so I do genuinely enjoy getting my ass beat in that game a lot, so we're just going to leave that one alone. Fantasy Realms. Oh, that's a toughie, because you can play so many games of this so easily, and you can so easily just shuffle it up and go again. The only problem being the fact that you have to score it at the end. So I think this one goes down to an 8. With that said, though, it probably does still deserve that 9 somewhere. I really do like Vault. I really do, but not an 8. More like a 7 in terms of the replayability scale, because it is a little bit more complicated and a little more random than most games that I would otherwise go with, so we'll leave it at that. Munchkin, I have genuinely not played since I applied this score back when I first made this account, so we're going to take that score off entirely until I get an actual chance to play it again. And most people in this hobby kind of hate it, so I think we'll just leave that one alone for the time being, in terms of just taking the score off and just leaving it like that. Seven Wonders Duel. I actually like this game, but not 8, more like 6, because I think the main problem with the unexpanded version of the game is that it usually ends up coming down to turn order. As in, how many ways have you found a way around just working your way around the turn order in order to place it so that the opponent walks right into a trap that you've set up. And a lot of the things about the expansions just vary up the amount of ways you can actually affect the turn order. So, yeah, it dampens my view on the game a little bit, because otherwise it is quite good, but it's not something I'd play regularly. So, down to a 6 it goes. Baseball Highlights 2045. Same deal, really, because the theme is very strong, and that makes it kind of hard to actually play competitively. And as a solo game, it's not that interesting, so I think I'm willing to put it down to a 6 as well. Cold Super Express, I'm going to drop it from an 8 to a 7, because it is pretty damn good at what it does, but you need a fair amount of people, and they need to be willing to let it be a little bit more random in order to actually get that going. So replayability does lose out a little bit on that one, so we're going to leave it at a 7. Interesting. Alright. So, Spectre Ops. Spectre Ops is really damn good. I like Spectre Ops a lot. I don't even own it, though. As you can see, there's no owned here. This is based off the video I did was from a friend who let me borrow their copy. So, what would I put for Spectre Ops in replayability scale? I think it hovers around a 7 as well, maybe a little bit lower, because I do think that you need like a bunch of really well into it people to actually make this work. So, I know I'm kind of going against my own thing that I set out at the beginning of the video, if they're willing to play my pick, but at the same time, it does vary on a bunch of other factors as well, doesn't it? I think 7 is fair, although maybe I might put it down towards a 6 as well, because if I rate Colt and Vault as 7, I honestly find them a bit easy to get to the table, or at least I would, under normal circumstances, so I think I'm willing to put this one down to a 6. But this is entirely replayability scale. I'm going to have to update my profile to actually say something about that as well, aren't I? Watergate is going to be a 6 as well, because it's a 2-player game, although it is absolutely dripping with theme and a lot of fun to play. I find 2-player games a lot harder to get out. Super Skill Pinball. Super Skill Pinball. I think we're going to put that at a 7. Because it really is easy to just get out and then just go. At least by myself, playing it solo. When you're playing it with other people, it ends up being a bit more of a problem. But by itself, it's probably okay. Century is going to stay an 8. Because it's simple, but damn if it ain't satisfying to be constantly building up that engine and running those gems through. There's actually a game on Kickstarter up right now, which is basically Century Golem Edition Plus, where they've added a few things to make building the chains a bit more complicated, and I'm interested in it, but not for the price they're charging for it, so that's a little unfortunate. Awkward Guess is probably going to go to a 6, because I definitely don't prefer it over Cult, Super Skill Pinball, Vault, Shards, Fantasy Realms, and what have you. But it's still fun on its own. It is still a relatively good game. Same with Carcassonne, actually. That's going to go to a 6. Because I haven't actually written up a blurb for this one yet, even though there is actually a video for it on my channel. But the simplicity is nice and all that, but it's usually a sort of when we can't really get up the urge to play anything else, while still sometimes being like a really good version of that sort of game. So leaving it at a 6 is probably fine for me personally. Suro is probably going to meet the same fate, just because it's a similar sort of thing, and actually, no, you know what? It's probably going to drop to a 5, because it's a really simple game, and so as a result, I don't really bring it out anymore. There are more complex versions of it, but I haven't had the opportunity to actually play those yet, so we'll have to see about that. Ticket to Ride is a hard one to do, because I haven't actually played it in a very long time, so yeah, I think on the replayability scale, it's going to drop to a 5 as well. Which is depressing, but I guess that's just the way it goes. Shards Between a Shower of Salvation, that's an expansion. Terraforming Mars. God, it's hard to actually say anything about that one, because I legitimately haven't played it since the game that I did, since my video for it. And I'm going to kind of have to replace that, because it doesn't fit with the rest of the format. So that's honestly a fair question. But you know what? Just to be fair to it, I'm going to drop it 1 point. I'm going to give it a 6. Because, man, if I'm being honest with you, that game does kind of outstay its welcome. But if I ever play it again, I'll probably update this score in some way or another. We'll have... basically, a friend of mine absolutely loves this game and tries to get it out every opportunity they get, because they've offered it up like 3 or 4 times, but it's just never come out. So, yeah, there you go. Under Falling Skies, that's going to drop a point, because I haven't had the opportunity to really get it back out yet. Same with Welcome Back to the Dungeon, I should say, even though maybe it's better going towards a 5. Because, again, it's a simple game, but I just haven't had the opportunity to get it back out, so on the replayability scale, it kind of fails. That's pretty clever. Garnchon clever. An absolute classic. With that said, replayability, I mean, I can genuinely pull it up on this web browser here and play it inside of 5 minutes. So, it does kind of mean that, yeah. God, what would I even say about that one? Honestly, I'll probably drop it to a 6. You know what, just for the purpose of having a look, let's see how my balance is going here. Wow, there are a lot more 6s now. That's going to be a problem. Alright, let's close that up and come on back down here. As I'd say, we've got a few more 6s to go through here, so we might actually end up losing a fair few of those 6s. So, Crossfire. Actually easy to get out. I would happily pull it out if given the opportunity. Simple enough to teach, yet complex enough to be interesting. I think it's going to stay at a 7. That's probably going to stay at a 7. Same with Control, actually, because its simplicity helps it out. The amount of different ways you can play it definitely helps as well. And I do enjoy playing it. Scout, not so much. That's kind of falling out of favor with the usual group, so it's probably going to drop to a 5. Exploding Kittens, 4. Zombie Flux, 4. Just because they're fine when nothing else is available, really. Same with Codenames, really. Friday, yeah, Friday's probably going to drop to a 5. Like, I have played all 3 of these. I actually have a sealed copy of Codenames that I really need to get out and actually try playing again. But, again, it's just getting the people together. Like, Exploding Kittens, you're not going to find many people willing to go for that. Codenames, you need to get a lot of people together to have an actually satisfying game of that. And Zombie Flux is so simple that I kind of just bundle up all Fluxes into that space. So, we're just going to leave that one alone. Friday's dropped a point because, as I say, I find it quite repetitive, especially since you find out all of the good tactics, and there's not that much in the way to encourage replayability once you've seen everything in the deck and figured out a few good strategies. Maybe when I get more opportunities to actually play that, well, there you go. We'll see about that. Friday. Yep, we already did that. Legendary. I need more expansions for this, but at the same time, if you need to buy an expansion for a game to keep it more interesting, does it count? I don't think it does. Lucidity is about the same, really. Although I've got a lot more 4s than I otherwise would like to hope for. But I was about to say, how's this look now? Yeah, this is starting to look a bit more like what I was hoping for when I was rebalancing everything. Although we're probably going to get a couple of 2s and 1s in there as well. So, yeah, that is starting to look a bit more what I was hoping for in using the entire scale. Alright, so Lucidity is a good game, though. I have played it a couple of times. But it's entirely push your luck and dice rolling, to the point where you absolutely don't feel in control of your own destiny. In which case, it's a die to the dream demons fast, or faster, when it comes to picking the amount of dice that you roll each turn. Not to mention other people can screw over your scoring, and it can just kind of get annoying like that. Sleeping Gods and Hostage Negotiator. As you can see here, I've actually managed to drop both of these off to a friend, so I'm probably going to drop both of these to 3s. Just because I don't see myself playing them again if I can avoid it. Because I just didn't like either of them, as you might be able to tell if you've actually watched my other videos. Because Sleeping Gods just takes up too much table space, I find the quests confusing and don't actually lead you to the right place, and the book just doesn't give me an idea of the world that this inhabits. So, I was just not a fan of the way Sleeping Gods does things, and I will rate it that low. Just because it's not gonna... There's no opportunity for it to get replayed, and therefore it's not going to. Hostage Negotiator is the same thing. Once you've figured out the majority of strategies that you really need to survive, the game just becomes more about luck than anything else. There is a tiny bit of strategy in there, but once you've gotten to that point, it just doesn't work for me. So here's me saying that I don't think this deserves a 5 out of 10 and I need to make my own rating system sooner rather than later. This is going to be a 4. I know people love Marvel Champions, but again, it's like Legendary, where I feel like it needs more expansions to really shine. And at least Legendary and Marvel deck building game has more going for it, even if it is a bit too easy. Marvel Champions is based around deck building, but just doesn't give you that much to encourage deck building right out of the box. Not helped by the fact that some of the archetypes they put in there are really underpowered. So, yeah, gotta say, not the biggest fan of that. Warp's Edge is a 3. Because I just can't get my head around Warp's Edge. That's probably going away. Like, I'm probably finding some reason to get rid of that sooner rather than later. And yeah, I don't feel that game at all, because the majority of it feels like building up tokens in phase 1, trying to get the boss and do some damage in phase 2, and then just blitzkrieging in phase 3 in order to kill the boss as fast as humanly possible. And no matter what set of like bosses and enemies you play with, it feels the same every time. So yeah, not a fan. Splendor, you're a 4 already, but you're gonna be a 2, because I just kinda hate it. I've played a lot of games of Splendor, and a lot of people absolutely love Splendor. All the people in my board game group are fine with Splendor, but I just can't stand it. I find myself constantly being on the opposite side of, I find myself having nothing that I'm capable of doing. It's hard to trace my way down to what I plan on doing in the future, because things can change up before you really get there, and we always end up playing 4-player games of it anyway, so that just kind of makes that whole thing worse. I genuinely can't stand it. So there you go. Unbroken is also going for a 2, because it has kind of the same problems with randomness that Warp's Edge does. Well, randomness, I say. More like Hostage Negotiator. Because it just doesn't work for me. The way that encounters work just don't work for me, and I just can't stand it. Blood on the Clock Tower is going to a 2, because I just can't stand that game anymore. I'd rather not play it if I can avoid it. Because, as I say, it has some really great ideas, but good lord if it isn't incredibly easy to get screwed over in that game. And now we get to the incredibly low ranks, and we see what we can do about that. Now, Formula D is going for a 1, because it's a roll and move, in the worst possible way. In a way that it's a race, and therefore you end up in a position where you're so far behind that there's no way that you can catch up, and it just doesn't feel like any fun anymore. And I will never play that game again. Same thing with Fuse, and same thing with One Deck Dungeon Forest of Shadows, because I find no replayability in them whatsoever, because they're so random and they're just chucking dice all the time. It feels like there's absolutely no thinking to be done in them whatsoever, because of the amount of randomness that's involved in both of them. So they both get to go to 1s, and they both get to stay there. We'll skip Hornet Leader for now. Ukatoa is going for a 1, because it has the same problem. And as I say over here, because this is a game I haven't actually done a video on, the one game I played of this resulted in me having the worst possible placements of dudes and alignments entirely through luck and no fault of my own, and I was eliminated through play 20 minutes before the game actually ended, left to do nothing but kingmake. I don't wish to play again. Let me extend on this story for you. So the way that this game works is that you've got this random board that gets set out, and then you have to randomly put down dudes of specific colours. And then once all the dudes are placed down, you draw 2 colours from the bag, and those 2 colours are the 2 that you have to work with. And you have to try and stay alive while everyone else loses all of their dudes. And I got, even despite everyone trying to screw over 2 colours, and me trying to keep those 2 colours out of the way because you know for a fact you're going to get them, they still ended up in really bad positions. I still got them and I was out. This game was a player elimination game, and it sucks. It just genuinely sucks, and I hate it. So it gets to be a 1 on the replayability scale, because I am never going to play that POS again. Dark Souls, the card game, it's not a 1, but it's definitely not much higher than that, so it can go to a 2. It just doesn't feel like Dark Souls, and that's the problem with it. I could make a better Dark Souls game than this game. And one of these days I'd like to try, but I just don't have the time anymore. Or the motivation. Or the energy. Or the brain power. Or the... We would be continuing on all day if I bothered to elaborate. And finally, Hornet Leader Carrier Air Operations. I wanted it to be Warfighter with planes, but it doesn't have the 2 dice roll system where you can roll somewhat badly, but one of those dice at least might do you a little bit of a favor. It doesn't feel like your strategies carry through as much as they do in Warfighter itself, but I think I'm just gonna leave it at a 3. in terms of replayability, but nah, I'm probably never going to play it again. I'm probably going to find some way to get rid of it so it can go to a 2. Now I'm curious as to what the balance of my scores is like. Has it not updated yet? Do I have to reload the page? There we go. Yeah, I think that's a lot more appropriate. I think that works a lot better for at least my personal preference when it comes to, yeah, I think that works just a lot better personally for me, just in terms of spread. And it gives me just like a lot more breathing room as to how I rate games. Just because it means that I've got a bunch of examples I can work with here. With that said, I should probably update my profile to specify how my game ratings work. So I'm probably going to have to mute the mic for this before, just so you don't hear clackety 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 clack. Yeah, I think that works. I'm relatively happy with how this came out, actually. And it also means that I actually get to rate some games 10s that I do believe actually deserve it, because 51st, Shards, Millennium Blades, and Warfighter all deserve to be 10s, at least in my personal opinion. And these, well, Neuroshima Hex does deserve a 9. Yeah, Fantasy Realms, better than Volt, better than Cult, better than Super Skill Pinball. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with this scaling, although I'll probably update my profile just a little bit more. Considering I don't actually give games proper scores, I'm actually fine with the way this works too. Yeah, I'm fine with this. I am absolutely fine with this, so I do apologize for the lack of a proper video, but you did get to hear opinions on a couple of games that I've played and not talked about on the channel yet, so I hope you at least got something out of that. And it's less than 30 minutes. I honestly thought this was going to take a lot longer. With that said, this has been Blue Maxima, and I'll see you all next time.